Hello! Today I have the S58, a top-mounted 60% keyboard that only comes either in the wing keyless or HHKB layout. This keyboard is made by Velocifire, a brand that has a lot of in-stock budget keyboards, but they also host group buys for custom options. The keyboard came with a felt case, which was a nice little surprise because it was never mentioned in the original listing. Here's the extra PCB that I bought with my kit. The PCB supports both VIA and QMK, and has 16 RGB LEDs for underglow, but not like that matters because you won't be seeing it with this case. One of the biggest factors in me buying this keyboard kit was because of this titanium gray color. I think it's a pretty nice gray. I'm not sure why the kit came with 3 Gary yellow switches, maybe to hold up the PCB, but it didn't do a great job at that, so the PCB has been moving around inside the case during transit. I'm glad it still works. On the bottom is an unfinished copper weight, and for some reason it says S58 not from Sam, but Sam was the designer of this keyboard. Maybe it's an inside joke. I would prefer it didn't have any text at all, but I'm never gonna see it anyways. Since the copper weight is unfinished, it will tarnish over time. It already had a metallic smell to it, and we'll take care of that in a bit. The copper weight is about 1.15 pounds, or about half a kilogram, and the rest of the keyboard weighs around 0.76 pounds, or about 0.34 kilograms. The stock plate is a carbon fiber and supports split backspace, split right shift, and ISO. Since the S58 only supports wing keyless or HHKB, only a 7U spacebar is supported. Alright, let's take care of that unfinished copper weight. I first polished it with Brazil, then applied a clear coating with Protect-A-Clear. I tried using a sponge to polish the weight, but there was a lot more tarnish than I was expecting. So I tried washing it with water, but then I was scrubbing the weight with a wet sponge, and that wasn't going anywhere. So then I started to use paper towels, and holy crap, I went through a lot of paper towels. I've never done this before, so I had no idea if I was even doing it right. After polishing the weight, I neutralized the weight with baking soda and water. I also had no idea what I was doing here, so I just dumped a bunch of baking soda in a glass of water. But after that, I rinsed the weight and then dried it. Opening the can of coating was difficult. It said cut to open on top, so I took an X-Acto knife to see if I could puncture the top, but that got me nowhere. After a few minutes of frustration, I took a hammer to it, but sadly I wasn't recording during that moment and I made quite a mess. After applying the first layer of coating, I let it dry for about half an hour, applied the second coating, wait for that to dry, and then flip the weight over and start the process all over again. And this is how it turned out. Definitely shinier than before, but I didn't do a great job at polishing the edges where the rubber bump-ons were. It would have been easier if the weight didn't already have them installed. I also didn't do a great job at applying the protective coating since there were some odd spots, but I'll deal with that eventually. Alright, let's build this keyboard. Quick note, always make sure the PCB works before you solder anything onto it. For the stabilizers, I use clear Durock V1 screw-in stabilizers, and for the switches, I use Mauves, lubed with 205G0 and filmed with Deskeys film. As for the keycaps, they were GMK Olivia. Installing the switches to the plate was not a great experience. With every other keyboard I've built, the switches snap onto the plate, but with this plate, I had to push down extremely hard and the switches slowly slid into place. It took a lot of effort to make sure the switches were seated correctly. After painfully pushing down a row of switches with my thumb, I started to use a lens cap to help me push down the switches. Alright, so there were 3 main reasons why I bought this keyboard. 1. The titanium gray. I think this particular gray looks great with GMK Olivia, which has been boxed up for quite a while because I had no keyboard to put it on. Second, the seamless case design. None of my other keyboards have a seamless design, and this one looks simple and clean. Lastly, the layout. I never thought I would own a 60% or a 1 keyless layout because I love having physical arrow keys and Windows keys, but a 60% allows me to have just a bit more mouse room while playing games, and the 1 keyless blockers ensure that I won't accidentally tap the Windows key. But there were two main issues with this keyboard: the hollow sound and the plate mounting points. Let's listen to the typing test. Due to the case design of the S58, there is a lot of empty space beneath the PCB, which is causing this terrible hollow typing sound. Shifting gears over to the mounting points now, the S58 has 8 mounting points, but 3 of them are in problematic places. Let's compare it to the mounting points on the E6.5. Do you see the issues? One of the mounting points on the S58 is directly under the spacebar switch. This tends to make the spacebar feel stiff and also results in a louder sounding spacebar. The other 2 mounting points are to the sides, and this is bad because side mounts creates non-uniform stiffness along the rows of the keyboard. So as you go inwards, you get more flex. With the E6.5, all of the mounting points are on the top and bottom, creating uniform stiffness along the keyboard rows. And there isn't a mounting point directly under the switch for the spacebar. You may be able to get away with not screwing the side mounts into the S58 case, but instead I'm going to burger mount this keyboard. I bought some rubber O-rings from Amazon, and luckily the stock screws are just long enough to make this work. It's called burger mount because you're sandwiching the plate between 2 O-rings on each mounting point. This creates a slightly softer bottom out experience and even makes the sound a bit nicer. They're a bit of a pain to install though. The keyboard still sounded hollow, so I used some foam. You could get something fancy like neoprene, but I just used the packing foam that came with the keyboard. Cut it up a bit, make sure it fits in the case, and this is what the S58 sounds like burger mounted and with foam underneath the PCB. The group buy price for the gray keyboard kit was $224 plus an additional $35 for the extra PCB. There are a few extras left on the Velocifire website at a higher price point, but would I recommend you buy this keyboard? As just a custom keyboard option, it's hard to say. The anode and case build quality are pretty good, but I don't like how hard it is to install switches onto the plate. The shipping also wasn't great because the PCB was unprotected and moving around inside the case. You could probably find something better, as there are a lot of options these days for a custom keyboard. But there aren't many options for a seamless 60% kit. So if you really want a seamless 60% win keyless or HHKB keyboard because it doesn't come in the standard layout, then sure, go for it, but it's going to take some additional work to make it better. The burger mount and foam mods were easy to do and greatly improved the keyboard typing experience, but polishing and coating the weight took a lot more time and effort than I originally thought. You could just leave it untreated and let it naturally oxidize, but I didn't want that. Alright, that's it for me today. Please like the video if you found it interesting, and subscribe to stay updated on my future content. Until next time.